At my son's wedding, the last thing I expected was to be humiliated in front of everyone. My heart was heavy with excitement and pride as I arrived early, just like I always did at family gatherings. I had spent months helping my son, Matthew, prepare for this day. My only child, the one I had raised on my own, was finally tying the knot. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, a celebration of family and love. But nothing could have prepared me for the scene I walked into. I stepped through the front door of the venue, my heels clicking against the polished floors of the grand ballroom. The decorations were beautiful. Peach and ivory drapery, candlelit tables, and fresh flowers spilling from every corner. I smiled, taking it all in, until my eyes landed on the people in the center of the room. There they were, my son and his bride, Alyssa, surrounded by family and friends, laughing and enjoying themselves. But my joy quickly faded. I caught sight of Megan, my daughter-in-law, standing with a glass of champagne in hand. Her eyes narrowed as soon as she saw me. The tension between us had been building for months, but today, on this day of all days, I hadn't expected it to boil over. Megan and I had never seen eye to eye, but I'd hoped that this wedding, this celebration of Matthew's new life, would finally bring us together. But I was wrong. Have you ever felt like an outsider at your own family event? Comment below if you've ever experienced anything like this. Megan's expression changed when she saw me, as if she had just spotted a flaw in the picture-perfect day. She stood taller, her body stiffening. My stomach twisted. I could already feel the chill in the air. I made my way toward the group, my heart racing. I'd raised Matthew with love, sacrificed so much for him, and yet here I was, already feeling like I didn't belong. My son was getting married, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I approached, Megan's words hit me like a cold gust of wind. "She's here," Megan said, her voice louder than necessary, laced with a coldness I couldn't quite place. Her words echoed in the room, a slight that was impossible to ignore. I froze, trying to keep my composure. Was she really doing this right now, on his wedding day? There I was, standing at the entrance of my own family's wedding, completely unprepared for the hurt that would come next. Megan looked at me with contempt, the kind of look that made me feel small and insignificant, like I was intruding on something that didn't belong to me anymore. She raised her glass to me, her smile tight and forced. What did I deserve to do? Have you ever felt betrayed by someone in your family? Ever been made to feel like you didn't belong? Comment below because I want to know how you handled it. Thank you for the approval. Let's continue with Chapter 1, diving deeper into the growing tension between Grace and Megan, adding suspense and keeping the emotional intensity. I approached the group, my breath slightly shaky, trying to ignore the growing pit in my stomach. But the moment I reached them, Megan's words struck again. "Mom, why don't you sit over there?" she said, her voice sickly sweet, laced with an undertone of something sharp. I paused, looking at the empty chair she pointed to, the farthest seat from the front. This wasn't the seat of honor, nor was it the place for someone who had spent years raising Matthew, guiding him through everything from his first heartbreak to his college graduation. A cruel laugh escaped her lips as she turned away, talking to Alyssa's parents. They didn't even notice. I could feel the blood rush to my head, my hands trembling. I had been here long before she came into the picture, and now I was being pushed aside, ignored like an outsider. It felt like the floor had dropped beneath me, like the wedding I had been so proud to support had suddenly become a place I didn't belong. My heart hurt in a way I couldn't explain. Megan's behavior was deliberate, and as much as I hated to admit it, I knew this wasn't the first time she'd tried to push me out. But now, this was in front of everyone. My son's wedding, a moment that should have been full of joy. It was public, and I could feel the sting of humiliation creeping in. I glanced around, desperately hoping someone would notice, but all I saw was smiling faces absorbed in their own little worlds. No one was looking at me, or if they were, they chose not to speak up. My son, Matthew, was busy talking to the other groomsmen. His eyes met mine briefly, and then he looked away. It hit me like a ton of bricks. He was avoiding me, and that hurt far more than Megan's cold words. For years, Matthew had been my world. He was my greatest achievement, my reason to keep going after his father passed. To see him act so distant on the most important day of his life felt like a betrayal I wasn't ready for. "Mom, it's just for today," Megan said, her voice raised slightly, forcing everyone to hear. "Can you just sit back and relax? It's the best thing for all of us." I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. The words were lodged somewhere deep, a tangled mess I couldn't untangle. Why did she hate me so much? Why was I being treated like this in my own family? Suddenly, I realized that this wasn't about seating arrangements or wedding details anymore. Megan wasn't just trying to isolate me. She was trying to take something from me, something that meant everything. My relationship with my son, my home, and everything I had worked my entire life for. What was her plan? I had no idea how far Megan would go, but I could feel something dark brewing beneath the surface. I wasn't just a mother to her. I was an obstacle. But what was she after? What was really happening behind the scenes? How would you feel if someone close to you treated you like an outsider at your own family event? What would you do? Let me know in the comments. I couldn't shake the feeling that the wedding was turning into a farce, at least for me. The warmth and joy I expected were replaced by cold indifference. I didn't want to make a scene, but something inside me snapped. I was about to retreat to my corner when I saw Matthew glance at me, and for a brief moment, our eyes locked. There was something in his gaze, something I couldn't quite decipher. Was it guilt? Regret? Or had he already made up his mind about which side he was on? The wedding was meant to be about celebrating him, about his new life with Alyssa. But why did it feel like I was being cast aside before this new chapter even started? The music blared as the crowd began to fill the space. Megan's voice echoed through the room, speaking louder than everyone else, taking over conversations. She'd made herself the center of attention. I turned away, trying to keep my emotions in check, but it felt impossible. Every glance, every word, every action from Megan felt like a direct hit to my heart. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. There was something bigger, something more sinister unfolding beneath the surface. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like an outsider in your own family? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. As the ceremony progressed, I decided to step outside for some air. I needed a moment to collect myself before I made a fool of myself in front of everyone. The cool breeze hit my face, and I closed my eyes, trying to find some semblance of peace. But then, I heard voices approaching, the sound of laughter, but not the kind that brought joy. Megan was talking with a few guests, and their conversation turned uncomfortably loud. "Doesn't she get it?" Megan's voice reached me first, cold and mocking. "She thinks I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just taking charge of what's mine. Robert's not going to step in for her. He's too weak for that." I froze. She was talking about me. I leaned against the wall, heart racing, as I tried to stay hidden. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Megan was manipulating Robert, my son, into thinking I was incompetent. But it wasn't just that. There was something more calculated happening here. Megan wasn't just taking control of the wedding. She was making a power move, and I was the one who was about to lose everything. All I wanted was to see my son happy, to be there for him as he started a new chapter in his life. But this wasn't the start I envisioned. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. Megan didn't see me as family.
She saw me as an obstacle, a threat to her power over Robert. I stood there for a moment, shocked and hurt, but a new wave of determination rose inside me. I wasn't going to let her take away my place in my son's life, or worse, my legacy, the beach house that I had sacrificed for and built from the ground up. I walked back inside, more determined than ever, but Megan was watching me from across the room. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she smiled. It wasn't the smile of a person who wanted to be friends. It was the smile of someone who thought they had already won. Have you ever felt like someone was out to take everything you worked for? How did you fight back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I left the reception with a heavy heart, but I told myself it was just a bump in the road. Maybe it was just wedding stress making everyone on edge. I couldn't let one bad moment ruin everything. I needed to calm down and remind myself that the day was about Matthew and not about Megan or her cold, calculated schemes. I drove home, eager to escape the chaos of the wedding and the heavy weight of those silent betrayals. But when I pulled into the driveway of my beach house, I immediately knew something was wrong. The first clue was the cars. Normally, only a few cars lined the driveway, the ones I used when I had guests. But today, there were 3 unfamiliar cars parked haphazardly across my lawn. My stomach dropped. I turned off the engine and stepped out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound of laughter and loud music echoed from inside the house, followed by the chaotic noise of children playing. My garden, which I had meticulously taken care of for years, was trampled, and the red geranium pots I'd nurtured for months were scattered and smashed. It felt like a bad dream. I walked up the steps, hesitating for a moment. What was going on? I had never seen anything like this before. Why was Megan's family here? Why were they in my home? I opened the door cautiously, my breath shallow. Inside, the house was nothing like I left it. The furniture was out of place and the smell of burnt food filled the air. The living room was a mess, kids running wild, and the familiar smell of my coffee was replaced with the faint scent of something I couldn't identify. And then I saw them. Megan's family, all of them, as if they belonged here, acting like they had always lived in this house. Her mother, a woman who had always looked at me with thinly veiled judgment, was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine, completely at ease. And there was Megan, standing in the doorway to the kitchen, wearing my apron, the one I'd embroidered myself, thinking of all the family gatherings I'd host here. She looked at me and gave me the same cold smile I had seen so many times. It felt like a slap to the face. I wanted to speak, to shout, but no words came out. I stood frozen at the doorway, my sanctuary invaded. This house had been my pride, my escape from the world, and now it was turned into something unrecognizable. But even more than the mess, what hurt the most was the realization that Megan had planned this. This wasn't a spontaneous gathering. This was a strategic move. Megan wasn't just taking over the wedding. She was trying to take over my life, my legacy, my home. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was part of something much bigger. I looked around at the mess in my home, and realized that this was just the beginning. What else had Megan planned? How far would she go to make me disappear from the life I had built for myself and my son? Imagine walking into your home only to find strangers treating it like their own. What would you do? Let us know in the comments.
Moment of realization. I stood there, speechless, taking in the chaos that had once been my sanctuary. The laughter, the voices, the unfamiliar faces. It was like someone had taken everything I had worked for and turned it into a mockery. Megan's family was everywhere. My living room, which I had carefully decorated over the years, was now a disaster zone. Empty beer cans, scattered clothes, and wet towels covered the furniture. My pride, my home, felt like it had been reduced to nothing. I had spent decades creating a haven, a place to rest, to remember my late husband, and to host my family. Yet here I was, staring at the wreckage of it all. I walked further into the living room, hoping this was some sick joke, but it wasn't. There were at least 5 strangers milling about, laughing and eating food from my kitchen. My kitchen, the place where I had spent countless hours preparing meals for my family. My heart sank as I heard a loud voice behind me. "Megan," I began, fighting to stay calm. "What is going on here?" She didn't even flinch. She just turned toward me with that cold, sly smile, the one that made me feel like I was beneath her. Have you ever had your personal space invaded by someone you trusted? What would you do if it was your home? Let us know in the comments. The cold truth. Megan crossed her arms, leaning against the counter like she had every right to be there. Well, Robert and I decided that we'd use the house more often. It's such a waste to leave it empty while you're in the city, living on your own. We need it for the family. I felt my face grow warm as my chest tightened. They had decided? This was my house, my dream, my sanctuary, and they had decided it was no longer mine? Robert agreed, she added, with a grin, as if that made everything okay. I couldn't believe my ears. Robert, my own son, had given her permission to take over my house without even discussing it with me? How could he do this to me? The man I had raised, the one I had poured my heart into for years, had sided with her, a woman who had always disrespected me. I turned toward the staircase, the one I had climbed so many times, each step reminding me of the years I had put into building this home. My heart felt like it was about to break as I climbed, determined to confront Robert. I reached the top of the stairs, expecting to find Robert in his room. But instead, I heard laughter, a group of voices from the kitchen, Megan's family, laughing like they were the ones who belonged. I opened the door to Robert's room, but when I stepped inside, it felt like a foreign place. The man I had raised was nowhere to be found. Was this really my son? Was this what he had become? A man who couldn't stand up for his own mother? Where was Robert? As I walked back down the stairs, I was ready to confront Robert, to demand an explanation. But instead, I was met by Megan's mother, who had been watching me the entire time. "Are you going to stay here all day?" she asked with a scoff, looking me up and down. "It's a family gathering. We're making memories here, while you're just sitting alone in your room." Her words hit me harder than I expected. My blood boiled as I realized that not only Megan, but now her entire family was trying to push me out of my own home. They had invaded my space, destroyed my memories, and now they were mocking me for daring to defend it. It wasn't just the physical invasion that hurt, it was the psychological and emotional manipulation that stung the most. Megan had carefully orchestrated this. She had been playing her game behind my back, turning my son against me in the process. And the worst part? Robert wasn't there to defend me. Where was he? Why hadn't he come to check on me? Was I no longer his mother, just a burden to him? I walked outside, feeling suffocated by the weight of the situation. Megan's family was enjoying my space like they had every right to be there, and I was the one left standing in the cold, abandoned and betrayed. But I wasn't done yet. I would get answers. The breaking point. I stood by the garden, staring at my favorite tree, the one I had planted years ago. The leaves swayed gently in the wind, a symbol of everything I had built, but now, even that was tainted by their presence. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My chest was heavy, my eyes stung with unshed tears. I went inside, searching for Robert. I had to know where his loyalty lay. This was not just about the house anymore. It was about the family I had nurtured, the love I had given, and now the betrayal that was tearing it apart.
Finally, I found him, sitting with Megan, laughing with the rest of her family. My son, the one who had promised to always have my back, was smiling with her as if nothing was wrong. He didn't even look at me. "Robert," I said, my voice shaking but steady, "what's going on? Why did you let this happen?" He looked up, his eyes meeting mine briefly before glancing away, his face expressionless. "Mom, we've been talking. It's just easier this way. Megan's family is growing and we need the space." It was like a slap to my face. This was my space, and here he was justifying the invasion. He wasn't even fighting for me. Can you imagine being treated like this by your own family? How would you handle a betrayal like this? Comment below and tell me your thoughts. Do you think Grace is right to fight back? Thank you for your patience. Let's continue with Chapter 3 of Stories of Auntie Grace. In this chapter, we'll dive deeper into the hidden agenda behind Megan's actions and the growing conflict over the property ownership. We'll explore Grace's realization of the true nature of the betrayal and escalate the suspense leading to the legal battle. The days following the wedding felt like a blur. Every time I walked into the house, it felt like a stranger's home. The laughter and chaos of Megan's family still echoed in my mind, their presence lingering like a bad memory. I couldn't shake it. I tried to focus on the few things that still made me feel grounded: the routine of my morning coffee, the plants I'd cared for, the memories of building this house with my own hands. But every corner of the house now seemed to reflect the disrespect Megan and her family had shown me. I spent the next few days trying to ignore the growing tension, but something was not right. I'd noticed little changes, small things that seemed insignificant at first, but the more I thought about them, the more they added up. The papers that had once been neatly filed were now scattered on my desk. The family photos that hung on the walls were crooked, and even the key to the beach house I had always kept in my drawer had gone missing. I felt it. Something was off, and I needed to know the truth. One evening, I decided to dig deeper. I had a gut feeling that Megan was hiding something from me. The house was my life's work, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me without a fight. I spent hours combing through my papers in the study, flipping through the old files I'd kept meticulously over the years. And that's when I found it. A document, tucked behind my insurance papers, was a property transfer request. And it wasn't just any transfer. It was a request to transfer the deed of my house into Robert's name, with Megan's name listed as the beneficiary. I stared at the document in disbelief. It wasn't just that they wanted to use my house. They were trying to take it from me entirely. The signature was Robert's, but the date was recent. Too recent. I felt my heart pound in my chest as I read the final line. This wasn't just a casual mistake. This was a calculated move. And the worst part, the signature wasn't just Robert's. It looked like it had been forged. There were also other documents attached, medical reports suggesting that I was no longer mentally fit to handle my property. I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They were using fraudulent documents to steal my home from me. Have you ever found something you weren't supposed to find? Something that changed everything? Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this was just a misunderstanding or something far worse? I could feel the anger building inside me, a deep rage that was quickly turning into determination. I had worked my entire life for this house, and now I was being pushed out by the very people I had loved and supported. Megan had never liked me, but this was personal. She wanted more than my house. She wanted to control everything I had worked so hard for. I couldn't let this slide. It was time to take action. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to fight back. The first step was simple. I needed to confront my son. But as I thought about the conversation we'd had before the wedding, My heart sank. Robert had already shown where his loyalty lay, with Megan, but I wasn't giving up. I had evidence, and I was going to make sure I used it. The realization that Megan was manipulating Robert into betraying.
As I sat down with the stack of papers in front of me, I knew that this wasn't just about property anymore. This was about family, and I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The next step was clear. I was going to hire a lawyer, someone who would help me take back what was rightfully mine. But little did I know, there was one more twist to this story that would make the fight even harder. Would you ever fight your own family to protect what's yours? Would you do whatever it takes to stand up for yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The day after I found the documents, I made up my mind. I couldn't wait any longer. I called Robert and told him I needed to speak to him. When he arrived at the house, he seemed distracted, as if he already knew why I was upset. But this time, I wasn't going to let him hide behind Megan's manipulations. "Robert," I said, my voice firm, "I need to know what's going on. I found the documents, and I know you've been working with Megan to take my house from me." He looked at me, his face pale. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Megan and I—" "Don't lie to me," I cut him off. "I have the proof. The property transfer request, the forged signatures, and this fake medical report that says I'm mentally unfit." I threw the papers on the table, and his eyes went wide. He was silent for a long moment, as if the words I had said hadn't even sunk in. Then, slowly, he looked up at me. His eyes were filled with shame, but there was no denying it. He had been part of this betrayal. "Mom, I didn't want this to happen, but Megan, she said we needed to secure the future for the kids, and—" "You betrayed me, Robert. For money. For a house," I said, choking on the words. "You turned your back on everything I've done for you, for her. Would you trust someone who betrayed you for money? Would you be able to forgive them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments." The final decision. After Robert's confession, the weight of the situation finally hit me. The betrayal wasn't just from Megan, it was from my own son. But I wasn't going to let this break me. I had worked too hard to let anyone take my legacy. I had spent years building this house, brick by brick, and I'd be damned if I let it slip away just because of Megan's manipulation. I called a lawyer, Thomas Gallagher, a man who specialized in family disputes and property fraud. I knew it was going to be a tough fight, but I wasn't about to back down. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice, and I was going to make sure that Megan and Robert faced the consequences for what they had done. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of relief. The battle wasn't over yet, but I had made a decision. I was going to take back what was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my son, stop me. The legal battle was about to begin, and I had no idea what was waiting around the corner. But I knew one thing for sure. I was going to fight for my home, my family, and my dignity, and I was not going to lose. If you think Grace has what it takes to win back her home and her dignity, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next chapter. You won't want to miss the twists that are coming. Thanks for your continued patience. Let's move on with Chapter 4. We will dive into the first confrontation between Grace and her son David, and how the emotional tension between them reaches its breaking point. I couldn't sleep that night. Everything felt off. The house was eerily quiet, yet I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. I had spent the entire day replaying everything in my mind, wondering how things had spiraled out of control so quickly. It was supposed to be a family celebration, a wedding, but instead it had become a battlefield, with my son caught between the two most important women in his life. But was he really caught, or had he already made his choice? I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront him. The morning light streamed through the windows, but it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. I stood in the kitchen, my hands shaking, as I made a cup of coffee, trying to steady myself before I faced the hardest conversation of my life. When I saw David walk in, a wave of anger and sadness washed over me. He looked tired, his face drawn. I had raised him to be strong, to be honorable, but this was betrayal in the worst way possible. "Mom, you're up early," he said, trying to sound casual,
but I saw the nervousness in his eyes. He knew what was coming. I didn't waste any time. "Robert," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I need to know what's going on. I found the documents, and I know you've been working with Megan to take my house from me." He looked at me, his face pale. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Megan and I—" "Don't lie to me," I cut him off. "I have the proof. The property transfer request, the forged signatures, and this fake medical report that says I'm mentally unfit." I threw the papers on the table and his eyes went wide. He was silent for a long moment, as if the words I had said hadn't even sunk in. Then, slowly, he looked up at me. His eyes were filled with shame, but there was no denying it. He had been part of this betrayal. "Mom, I didn't want this to happen, but Megan, she said we needed to secure the future for the kids, and you betrayed me, Robert. For money. For a house," I said, choking on the words. "You turned your back on everything I've done for you. For her. Would you trust someone who betrayed you for money? Would you be able to forgive them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments." The final decision. After Robert's confession, the weight of the situation finally hit me. The betrayal wasn't just from Megan, it was from my own son. But I wasn't going to let this break me. I had worked too hard to let anyone take my legacy. I had spent years building this house, brick by brick, and I'd be damned if I let it slip away just because of Megan's manipulation. I called a lawyer, Thomas Gallagher, a man who specialized in family disputes and property fraud. I knew it was going to be a tough fight, but I wasn't about to back down. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about justice, and I was going to make sure that Megan and Robert faced the consequences for what they had done. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of relief. The battle wasn't over yet, but I had made a decision. I was going to take back what was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my son, stop me. The legal battle was about to begin, and I had no idea what was waiting around the corner. But I knew one thing for sure. I was going to fight for my home, my family, and my dignity, and I was not going to lose. If you think Grace has what it takes to win back her home and her dignity, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next chapter. You won't want to miss the twists that are coming. Thanks for your continued patience. Let's move on with Chapter 4. We will dive into the first confrontation between Grace and her son, David, and how the emotional tension between them reaches its breaking point. I couldn't sleep that night. Everything felt off. The house was eerily quiet, but I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. I had spent the entire day replaying everything in my mind, wondering how things had spiraled out of control so quickly. It was supposed to be a family celebration, a wedding, but instead it had become a battlefield, with my son caught between the two most important women in his life. But was he really caught, or had he already made his choice? I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront him. The morning light streamed through the windows, but it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. I stood in the kitchen, my hands shaking, as I made a cup of coffee, trying to steady myself before I faced the hardest conversation of my life. When I saw David walk in, a wave of anger and sadness washed over me. He looked tired, his face drawn. I had raised him to be strong, to be honorable, but this was betrayal in the worst way possible. "Mom, you're up early," he said, trying to sound casual, but I saw the nervousness in his eyes. He knew what was coming. I didn't waste any time. "Robert," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I need to know what's going on. I found the documents, and I know you've been working with Megan to take my house from me." He looked at me, his face pale. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Megan and I—" "Don't lie to me," I cut him off. "I have the proof, the property transfer request, the forged signatures, and this fake medical report that says I'm mentally unfit." I threw the papers on the table and his eyes went wide. He was silent for a long moment, as if the words I had said hadn't even sunk in. Then, slowly, he looked up at me. His eyes were filled with shame, but there was no denying it. He had been part of this betrayal. "Mom, I didn't want this to happen, but Megan, She said we needed to secure the future for the kids, and you betrayed me, Robert. For money. For a house, I said, choking on the words. You turned your back on everything I've done for you. For her. You don't think it's better to take everything from me for your family's comfort? You're throwing me away. After everything I've done for you for this family, you're choosing her over me. There was a long pause as David looked at me, his lips trembling. I saw something flicker in his eyes. Was it guilt? Or was it regret? But then Megan appeared in the doorway and I saw the smug smile on her face, the one that told me everything I needed to know. She was the one pulling the strings, and David was too weak to see it. He didn't want it to come to this. But Megan is right. It's time to think about our future.
My heart shattered into pieces. He was already lost. Do you think Grace should keep fighting for her home? What would you do if your own son turned his back on you for money? Let me know in the comments. I spent the next few days seething with a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and grief. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the wedding, what had happened in my own home. How could they, Megan and David, just take everything from me? My heart was heavy, but something inside me refused to back down. I wasn't going to let them win. I knew I had to take action, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. The first step was simple: hire a lawyer. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't going to be a simple fight. This wasn't just about property anymore. This was about family, about loyalty, and about justice. If they thought I would roll over and let them take everything from me, they were gravely mistaken. I picked up the phone and called Thomas Gallagher, a lawyer I knew from a few years back. He specialized in family disputes and property fraud, and I knew he would be the right person for the job. As I dialed the number, I could feel the tension building inside me. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my dignity, my independence, and everything I had worked for. Mrs. Crawford, Thomas said when he answered the phone, his voice calm and professional. I remember you well. What can I do for you? I need your help, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about my house, Thomas. I've been betrayed by my own son and his wife. They've tried to steal my property, and I need to take action before it's too late. I could hear Thomas pause on the other end of the line. He knew this wasn't just a simple property dispute. It was much more than that. I'll get to work on it right away, Mrs. Crawford. We'll figure this out. His confidence was a small comfort, but I knew the battle ahead wouldn't be easy. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Megan wasn't going to let this go easily. She had manipulated Robert into siding with her, and now she was trying to take what was mine. But I wouldn't back down. Not this time. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and gathering evidence. I began digging through old files, emails, and bank statements, looking for anything that would give me the upper hand in the upcoming legal battle. But the more I dug, the more disgusting the truth became. Megan had been plotting this for months. She had forged documents, created fake medical reports to claim I was mentally unfit, and had manipulated Robert into believing I was too old to manage my affairs. It was all part of her plan to get my house into her hands. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Megan had used my son, the child I had raised on my own, to do her dirty work. They were trying to steal my home and my legacy, and they thought I wouldn't fight back? The betrayal hit me hard. How had it come to this? I have spent my entire life raising Robert. I had sacrificed everything for him, and this is how he repaid me? By letting Megan turn him against me? I couldn't stop the tears that burned in my eyes, but I wiped them away. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to fight. I packed all the evidence I had gathered into a file, making sure every document was in order. I was ready to confront this fight head on. But what I didn't know, what I could never have prepared for, was just how far Megan and Robert would go to get what they wanted. Have you ever had someone close to you lie or manipulate you for their own gain? How did you handle it? Comment below and let me know what you would do in Grace's shoes. The next day, I met with Thomas Gallagher in his office. His firm was a quiet, professional space, with walls lined with books and legal files. It was a relief to be in a place where justice still mattered. I sat across from him, the weight of the situation pressing down on me, and he listened intently as I explained everything about Megan's manipulation, the forged documents, and the betrayal by my son. "Mrs. Crawford," Thomas said after a long pause, his voice serious, "what you're dealing with is not just a civil issue anymore. We're looking at fraud, forgery, and possibly even elder abuse. Megan and Robert could face serious consequences for what they've done." The words elder abuse sent a chill down my spine. This was bigger than I had imagined. They had tried to strip me of everything, my home, my independence, and my dignity, and they weren't just going to get away with it. "I'm going to take this case, Mrs. Crawford, but I need you to understand this won't be easy. We'll have to go public, and there will be consequences. Are you prepared for that?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. Going public meant exposing everything, my private life, my family's betrayal, and the pain they had caused me. But I had no choice. If I didn't fight back, I would lose everything. "I'm ready," I said, my voice strong despite the fear in my chest. "I've already lost my son. I can't lose my home, too." Thomas nodded, and we began discussing the next steps. I was going to take them to court, but as we worked through the details, I couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was just beginning. Megan wasn't going to give up that easily, and she had far more tricks up her sleeve than I realized. "Would you fight back if you were in Grace's shoes, or would you let it go and move on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below." The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Thomas filed the lawsuit, and I watched as the legal wheels started to turn. The court papers, the eviction notice, and the fraud charges were all official now. Megan and Robert were being taken to task for what they had done. The excitement and nervousness were overwhelming, but I felt a strange peace. I had finally taken control of my life again. No more letting Megan and Robert walk all over me. It was time to fight. The first hearing was scheduled for the following week, and I felt like everything was about to change. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to back down. I had spent years building my life, my home, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me without a fight. As the hearing approached, the tension built. I was ready to take my stand, but I was also terrified. What if I lost? What if they won? What would become of my life? But I couldn't give in to fear. I had earned everything I had, and I was going to make sure it stayed mine. The day before the hearing, I received a call from Megan's lawyer. They wanted to settle out of court. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Were they finally realizing the gravity of what they had done? Or was this just another manipulation? If you think Grace is ready to win this battle, hit that subscribe button to follow her journey. The next chapter will reveal what happens in the courtroom, and you won't want to miss it. The days after the hearing were the hardest yet. Megan was already spreading lies about me to anyone who would listen. The whispers came from family friends, people I had once trusted. I knew something was wrong when I started hearing more and more rumors about me being too old to manage my affairs, and that my mental health was apparently in decline. They were calling me senile, all behind my back, of course. The lies were starting to spread faster than I could shut them down, and I felt myself sinking into an emotional hole. Megan was playing a dangerous game, but what I hadn't realized was just how far she would go to control everything. It wasn't enough that she tried to steal my house. She was trying to erase my existence. I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Megan was setting the stage for something even worse. I had been blind to the depth of her manipulation, but now it was becoming clear. She had already convinced Robert to side with her, and now she was trying to destroy my reputation. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about everything I had worked for. My dignity, my life, my relationship with my son. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to act fast. If I let this continue, Megan would succeed in taking everything from me. I couldn't let that happen. But what else was she planning? What was her next move? Have you ever been the victim of false rumors or someone's lies? How did you handle it? Let us know in the comments below because I want to hear how you overcame the betrayal. As the days passed, I began to gather more evidence. I knew Megan had been spreading false information, but I had no idea just how far she'd gone. I started speaking to a few trusted friends who told me that Megan had even gone so far as to speak to people in my community, claiming that I was mentally unfit to manage my finances and that my house should be better utilized. The worst part? Robert, my own son, hadn't just sided with her, he was encouraging it. Megan had somehow convinced him that I was a burden. I couldn't understand how he had become so blind to everything I had done for him. I had raised him alone, poured my heart into giving him everything he needed. How could he not see how wrong this was? How could he turn against me so easily? The realization hit me like a wave. Megan wasn't just trying to take my house. She was trying to take everything that was mine. The family I had built, the memories we had shared in this house. It was all part of her grand scheme to tear me apart. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wasn't going to walk away until I had the answers I needed. What exactly was Megan planning next? What did she hope to gain from all of this? I had to find out, and I had to act fast. I decided to visit Megan's house. It was time to face her head on. But when I got there, I found something that made my heart stop. A letter sitting on the front step addressed to me, written in Megan's handwriting. It wasn't just a letter. It was a final demand, a threat to take the property. Have you ever had to face someone who was trying to destroy everything you've worked for? How did you handle it? Tell me in the comments below because this is about more than just a house. It's about fighting for yourself. I didn't waste any time. I read the letter. It was exactly what I had feared. Megan and Robert had plotted together to transfer the property out of my name completely. In fact, they were already preparing to sell the house and move it into Robert's name, under the guise that I was no longer fit to make decisions for myself. It was heartbreaking. I had built this home with my own hands. Every brick, every window, every garden, and now they were trying to take it from me. But there was more. The letter also mentioned that they would use my health, the supposed mental incompetency report, to justify the transfer. Megan had found a corrupt doctor to back up her lies. I couldn't just sit by and let them destroy my legacy. This wasn't just about money or the house. It was about my dignity, and they were about to learn that I wasn't going down without a fight. Megan had already crossed the line, and now it was time to expose her. But would I be able to stop her before the property was taken from me? Or was I already too late? I couldn't sit around waiting anymore. I had to take action. I called Thomas immediately and scheduled a meeting. This wasn't just about getting my house back anymore. This was about taking down the people who had betrayed me. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Have you ever had someone manipulate you with lies or false documents? How did you stop them? Comment below and share your story with me. Grace's fight isn't just hers. It's a fight for anyone who's ever been betrayed. I walked into Thomas's office with determination. I had all the evidence I needed now. Proof of Megan's deceit, the forged signatures, and the fake medical report. But Thomas's expression wasn't one of hope. It was one of concern. Mrs. Crawford, this is worse than we thought. Megan's lawyer is going to fight tooth and nail. They've already gotten the media involved. I felt a rush of anger flood my chest. Megan was using everything, even the public opinion against me, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. Thomas laid out a plan. We were going to go after them legally, but also publicly. The truth had to come out, no matter what. The fight wasn't just for me anymore. It was for anyone who had been wronged by family, anyone who had lost everything to someone they loved. I walked out of the office with a sense of purpose. The battle was about to get harder, but I was ready. I wasn't just going to win back my house. I was going to make them regret everything they'd done. Do you think Grace has the strength to win this legal battle? How far would you go to defend your legacy?
Hit subscribe and stay with us as the fight for Grace's home continues. You won't want to miss the twists that are coming.
The truth comes crashing in. I had spent the better part of a week trying to pull myself together, but the more I thought about the situation, the more disbelief crept in. How had Megan and Robert gotten away with this? How had my son, the child I had raised on my own, become so manipulated by a woman who was nothing but self-serving? I needed to know everything, every detail, every lie, every moment they had plotted against me. So I decided to confront Megan, head on. It was early in the morning when I arrived at Megan's house. I had never stepped foot there without Robert, but today it felt different. Today I wasn't going to be the quiet mother-in-law. Today I was going to fight for everything. I rang the doorbell, my fingers trembling. The door opened, and there she stood, Megan, wearing that same smug expression I had come to hate. "Oh, it's you," she said, as if I were an annoyance she had to deal with. "What's the matter now?" I stepped inside without waiting for her invitation. "I know what you've been doing," I said, my voice low but steady, "and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too." Megan didn't flinch. Instead, she took a step back and let me into the living room. "Oh, I'm sure you do," she said, crossing her arms. "But Grace, you've been so busy trying to make me the villain, you haven't even seen the bigger picture. You really think this is all about the house? Have you ever had someone try to take something that meant the world to you? What would you do if your own family betrayed you? Share your thoughts in the comments below." The hidden agenda. Megan led me to the couch, and for a moment I thought she was going to tell me the truth. Finally. But instead, she smiled, that same cold smile of hers. "You know, Grace, I've tried to be patient with you, but you've made it so difficult. You think you're the only one who's suffered. You think you're the only one who's worked for what you have. But the truth is, you've been selfish. Robert and I have been carrying this family for years, and you've only thought of yourself." The words hit me like a slap to the face, but I didn't flinch. I wouldn't let her win. "You don't get to call me selfish," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You've been using Robert to get what you want. You've manipulated him, and now you're trying to take everything I've worked for. You think that's justified?" Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something else in her eyes. Fear. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "You think you can win this in court? Do you have any idea what you're up against?" I shook my head, refusing to back down. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. And if you think Robert is going to stand by you forever, you're sadly mistaken. He may have been blind to what you were doing, but I won't let you take everything from me. This house is my life's work, and I'll fight for it until the end." Megan chuckled, but there was an edge to it. "You really think Robert will let you win this? He's the one who's been keeping you here, keeping you in your little world. He's the one who's signed the papers, Grace, not me. You're the one who raised him to be weak. He's going to choose me, and there's nothing you can do about it." Her words hit harder than anything she had said before. Robert had signed the papers? Was that the truth? Was he really so easily swayed by Megan's lies? My heart clenched at the thought. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. And yet I knew this was just the beginning. Megan was trying to take control, but I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I had worked for. I turned toward the door, ready to leave. "I'll see you in court, Megan." And I walked out the door, my mind racing. The war was far from over. Do you think Megan's going to win this battle, or will Grace fight back harder? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you want to see what happens next. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to prepare myself for what was coming. The evidence was piling up against Megan and Robert, but the deeper I dug, the darker it got. I didn't just want my house back, I wanted justice. I couldn't let them get away with what they had done to me, to my family. I called Thomas again, ready to take things to the next level. We discussed everything: the forged signatures, the fake medical report, and the plot to steal the property. I wasn't just going to fight for my house, I was going to expose Megan for the manipulative person she was. But as the court date drew nearer, I began to wonder if this was more than just about winning. Was I willing to risk my relationship with Robert? Could I ever forgive him for choosing Megan over me? I had no answers, but I did know one thing. I wasn't going to let Megan win. She was about to meet a force she never expected. I went to bed that night knowing tomorrow would be a new day, a day of reckoning. I was ready to fight, but would Robert stand with me or turn his back once again? Who do you think will win this battle, Grace or Megan? How far would you go to reclaim what's yours? Hit subscribe to see how this story unfolds. You don't want to miss the next twist. The day of the court hearing arrived faster than I expected. I had prepared myself for months, gathering evidence, speaking with my lawyer, and fighting back against the manipulation that had been happening in my own family. I had fought hard, but the weight of everything still hung heavy. Today was the day when it would all be decided. Would I win back my house, or would Megan and Robert succeed in taking it from me? My hands shook as I walked into the courthouse, but I kept my head high. This was more than a legal battle now. It was about family, the family I had built and the family I had lost. I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for my legacy. When I entered the courtroom, I could feel the eyes on me. The judge, the lawyers, even Megan and Robert, all watching, waiting. There was no turning back now. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to let them take what was mine. But as I looked at Robert, sitting beside Megan, my heart sank. He wasn't with me. He was with her. I had raised him, loved him, but here he was, the man I had once trusted, now siding with the woman who had taken everything from me. "Your Honor, this is a simple case," Megan's lawyer began. "My clients have been deprived of their rightful inheritance, and Mrs. Crawford is simply unable to manage the property anymore. She has no use for it." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't just about the house. They were trying to strip me of my independence, my autonomy, everything I had worked for. I sat there, my hands clenched in my lap, struggling to contain my emotions. Megan and her lawyer were doing exactly what I expected. They were trying to paint me as incompetent, trying to tear me down in front of the court. "Your Honor," Thomas, my lawyer, spoke up, cutting through the tension, "we have evidence that Mrs. Crawford has been in full control of her finances and property for over 2 decades. The documents presented by the opposing side are forgeries, plain and simple." The room grew still. The truth was finally out, and there was no denying it. Megan and Robert had lied, and I was going to make sure the court knew it. But even as Thomas spoke, I could see the smirk on Megan's face. She wasn't scared, she was confident. I wasn't just fighting her anymore. I was fighting her whole family, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to win. I've worked hard my whole life for everything I have. I built this house from nothing. I raised Robert to be a man of integrity. But now I'm standing here fighting for something that's mine. I won't let anyone take it from me. But even as I spoke, I couldn't help but wonder, was Robert hearing me? Was he even listening? Or was he too far gone, already consumed by Megan's lies? I turned to face my son, who was sitting in the corner, his face unreadable. "Robert," I said, my voice shaking, "how could you let this happen? How could you let her destroy everything we built? What would you do if you were in Grace's shoes? Would you stand up for yourself or let your family take everything from you? Let us know in the comments below. This fight isn't just for Grace. This is for anyone who's ever been betrayed by those closest to them.
Robert finally spoke, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret in his eyes. He stood up, and I could hear the shaking in his voice as he addressed the judge. "Mom, I didn't want it to come to this, but Megan's been right about a lot of things. We need to do what's best for the family." I could feel the coldness in his words, and for the first time in years, I felt a distance between us. It was like I was looking at a stranger, not my son, not the boy I had raised with all my love and support. "You've made your choice, Robert," I said softly, "and you're right about one thing. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm done being the one who gives everything and gets nothing in return." "You're not going to get away with this, Evil." I turned back to Megan. "You think you've won, but I will not let you take what is mine. I will fight you until the end." The courtroom was silent, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret in Robert's eyes. But then he looked away, and that's when I realized the betrayal was final. The truth comes crashing down. The rest of the hearing passed in a blur, but I knew, deep down, that the true battle was over. It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about me. I was fighting for my own worth, for the respect I had always given but never received in return. Megan's lawyer made his closing statement, painting a picture of a woman who was too old, too weak to care for herself, let alone her property. But I was done being the victim. This wasn't just about property rights, it was about dignity. When the judge stood, the entire room went quiet. It felt like the entire world was holding its breath. The judge was about to make his decision, and everything I had worked for was hanging in the balance. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding bang. My heart raced in my chest as I waited for him to speak. After reviewing all the evidence, I find that the plaintiff, Mrs. Grace Crawford, is entitled to her property. The documents presented by the defense are fraudulent, and the property transfer is null and void. A wave of relief washed over me. I had won. But even in my victory, there was something bitter about it. The damage had already been done. My relationship with Robert would never be the same. Megan had won too. She had made sure that my son would never look at me the same way again. "This isn't over, Grace," Megan's voice rang out, cutting through the silence. "You might have won this battle, but we're not done yet. Do you think Grace is finally free from Megan and Robert's manipulation? Or do you think the battle is far from over? Comment below and hit that subscribe button to follow Grace's journey as the fight for her dignity continues."
I woke up the morning after the ruling with a strange feeling. For a moment, I thought I had imagined the entire ordeal, but the court papers sitting on the table next to me told a different story. I had won. The property was mine once again, and Megan's plans to steal it had been exposed. But even though the judge's decision had been a huge relief, I couldn't shake the emptiness I felt. The house was mine again, but the damage had already been done. Robert had chosen to stand with Megan, and the relationship I had with my son was forever changed. The home that I had worked so hard to build, brick by brick, no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a place full of betrayal. As I sat on the porch sipping my coffee, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led me here. The years of sacrifice, the love I had poured into raising Robert, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. But I wasn't done. The court's ruling had been a victory, but it was only the beginning. Megan wasn't going to just accept defeat. She never did. And Robert, my son, the one I had raised, was now caught in the crossfire of this betrayal. The fight wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. As I gazed out at the ocean, I saw a car pull into my driveway. It was Megan, with her smug smile. And this time, she didn't come alone. She had brought someone with her. Someone I wasn't expecting. Do you think Grace will finally find peace after everything she's been through, or is Megan plotting her next move? Comment below and subscribe to stay tuned for what happens next in this dramatic saga. Megan walked up to the porch, but this time her smile was different. It wasn't the confident grin I had seen during the trial. It was something colder, almost vengeful. She stood in front of me, hands on her hips, like she owned the place. "I know you think you've won, Grace," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "but this isn't over." I looked at her, my heart racing. I had already won the legal battle, so what was she planning now? "I'm not going anywhere, Grace," she continued, her eyes narrowing. "And neither is Robert. This house, your legacy, it's still going to be ours. You can't keep it. You think you can push me out of the picture? You can't." I stood up, my body stiff with anger and shock. How could she still be so defiant after everything she had done? But in that moment, I realized something. Megan had underestimated me. She had underestimated my resolve. This wasn't just about winning the house anymore. This was about fighting for everything I had, my dignity, my family, and my right to be respected. I looked Megan dead in the eye. "You're wrong, Megan. I won't let you destroy me. You can't take my legacy." Megan's eyes flashed with anger, but I could see the fear lurking beneath. She knew I wasn't going to back down, but was I prepared for the next step in this war? Do you think Megan is finally backing down, or does she have something more up her sleeve? What would you do if you were in Grace's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next in this dramatic saga. Later that day, I received an unexpected call. It was from Robert, my son, the one who had stood by Megan's side throughout this entire ordeal. He had never once defended me, never once even tried to see my side of things, but now he was calling me. "Mom," Robert's voice trembled over the phone, "I've made a huge mistake." I felt a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. Was he finally coming to his senses, or was this just another manipulation? "Robert," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "what happened to you? How could you stand by her? How could you choose her over me, over everything I've done for you?" "I don't know," he said, the sorrow clear in his voice. "I was blind, Mom. I let Megan convince me that you were the problem. But I see now, you were right. I was wrong to turn my back on you." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream at him for everything he had put me through. But all I could feel was sadness. Robert wasn't just my son anymore. He was a man who had betrayed me, who had allowed his wife to tear our family apart. And even though he was apologizing now, the damage had already been done. "I'm sorry, Mom. Please, I want to fix this. I want to make it right," Robert said, his voice breaking. Do you think Robert's apology is sincere, or is it too little, too late? What would you do if your child betrayed you like this? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to see what Grace decides to do next. As the days passed, I realized something. The court victory was only part of the journey. Megan may have lost the house, but the emotional scars of this battle would stay with me forever. My relationship with Robert was irrevocably damaged, and I couldn't pretend everything was okay. Even if he apologized, I would never forget how he had chosen Megan over me. But as I stood in my living room, gazing at the walls that I had built with my own hands, I realized that winning wasn't just about the house. It was about taking control of my life. I had fought for my home, my dignity, and my future. I had stood up for myself in a way I never thought possible. The next few weeks were filled with mixed emotions. I was relieved that the legal battle was over, but the truth remained, my family had fractured beyond repair. Megan and Robert had been defeated in court, but in my heart, I knew that some wounds could never heal. As I sat on the porch, looking out over the beach, I realized I had to make a choice. I could either hold on to the past and let this betrayal eat me alive, or I could move forward, knowing that I had won. I didn't know what my future would hold, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let anyone steal my peace again. I woke up the morning after the trial with an unexpected sense of peace, though it didn't quite feel like the victory I had imagined. The house was finally mine again, but there was a heaviness I couldn't shake. Megan and Robert may have lost the court battle, but the emotional cost was far from over. The house felt empty, even though it was filled with memories I had cherished for years. The walls that I had built with my own hands now seemed to echo the betrayal that had run so deep. Megan had been defeated legally, but emotionally I had lost something too, the relationship with my son that I had worked so hard to nurture. As I sat on my front porch, gazing out at the waves, I couldn't help but think about everything I had gone through. It had been a long, hard battle, and it wasn't just about winning the house anymore. It was about finding myself again, reclaiming what was rightfully mine. But now that the dust had settled, I found myself wondering, was it worth it? Had I sacrificed too much for the house, the legacy that I had built for my family? Was there a way to rebuild my life, or was everything broken beyond repair? I stood up from my chair and walked into the house, still unsure of the answers. But as I moved through the rooms, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was missing, something important. I had won the legal battle, but I couldn't ignore the silent battle raging within me. Have you ever won a battle only to realize it came at a cost? What would you do if you won something important but lost a part of yourself in the process? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part of Grace's journey. In the days that followed, I did my best to move forward, but I couldn't ignore the pain of seeing Robert so distant. He had apologized, but it didn't change the fact that he had chosen Megan over me, even after everything I had sacrificed for him. I decided to give him space, but it wasn't easy. As much as I wanted to forgive him, I felt like something had been permanently broken between us. I realized that the battle for the house was over, but the fight for my son's respect and love wasn't. It wasn't just about a house or property, it was about trust. And trust, once broken, was the hardest thing to rebuild. A part of me wanted to reach out, to fix things with Robert, but I also knew that the truth had been exposed, and no amount of apologies could change what had happened. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine. Megan's influence had changed the course of our relationship, and the damage had been done. And yet, I found myself wondering, what now? Was there still a chance to rebuild my relationship with Robert? Could I ever trust him again? Or would I be forced to accept that family, the people I had loved and trusted most, had betrayed me? One evening, I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring out at the water. As I sipped it slowly, I thought about the future. I wasn't sure what it held, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this define me. I would heal. Whether that meant letting go of the past or fighting for my family, I would find a way forward. Have you ever had a relationship change forever after a betrayal? What would you do to rebuild it? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe to follow Grace's journey forward. Over the next few weeks, I focused on healing. I knew that I couldn't move forward without making peace with the past. But it wasn't easy. The memories of Megan's betrayal, the courtroom fight, and the disappointment I felt from Robert's actions were still fresh in my mind. I decided to spend more time with the things that brought me peace, working in my garden, reading books, and spending time with friends. Slowly, I began to realize that while I had fought for the house, the real victory was in taking back my life. I didn't need Megan or Robert to define me. I was stronger than that. But there was still one thing weighing on me. Megan and I hadn't spoken since the court ruling, and I knew that she would never stop trying to weaken me. The fight wasn't over, not for her. She would find a way to make sure I never felt safe in my own life again. But maybe it was time to make a choice, to either continue battling her or to move on and take back control of my life in a different way. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that I had survived the hardest part of the fight. As I walked to the beach one evening, I saw a familiar figure in the distance, Megan. She was standing by the water, her back to me. I took a deep breath. This wasn't over, and I had a feeling that this final encounter would change everything. Do you think Grace should keep fighting, or is it time to let go of the past? What would you do in her shoes? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in Grace's life. I approached Megan cautiously. This was the moment I had been avoiding. The moment where everything would either be fixed or completely broken. She turned when she heard me approach, and there it was again, the same smirk, the same defiance in her eyes. She hadn't changed. "Well, well, Grace," Megan said, as if nothing had ever happened. "What can I do for you? I didn't expect to see you here." I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. I came to talk, to clear the air. I don't want to keep fighting, but I'm not going to pretend like nothing happened either. We need to address what you did. Her face darkened, but she didn't back down. "You still don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice ice cold. "I'm doing what's best for this family. You don't belong in the picture anymore. Robert and I have moved on. You need to too." Her words stung, but they didn't have the same effect on me anymore. I had fought for what was mine, and I wasn't going to let her tear me down. "I'm not going anywhere, Megan," I said, my voice firm. "I've built my life, and no one, not you, not Robert, will take that from me." Megan said nothing more, but I could see the tension in her body. This was the final confrontation, the end of this chapter. Do you think Grace finally stood her ground against Megan? What do you think is next for Grace? Hit subscribe to stay updated and follow the next part of Grace's journey. The road ahead. I left that day feeling a little lighter. Megan had nothing left to take from me. The house was mine, and my future was in my hands. I didn't know what the road ahead would look like, but I was finally ready to move forward. I had fought back, reclaimed my dignity, and stood up for myself. Now it was time to find a new purpose. The betrayal and the hurt would always be there, but they didn't define me. I would rebuild my relationship with Robert on my terms, if he was willing to try. As I walked back to my house, the sun setting over the ocean, I realized something. I didn't need Megan's approval or Robert's forgiveness. I had done what was right, and that was enough. But life wasn't done with me yet. The journey ahead was just beginning. Would I ever find peace with Robert? Could we repair our fractured relationship? Only time would tell.